A solitary figure wandered through the drenched alleyways of Zadarova, the city known for swallowing souls whole. She was not just any figure. She was Alice, her clothes clinging to her skin under the persistent downpour, droplets trickling down as if mocking her despair. In the neon-lit haze of the city night, Alice's breath shivered out of her, mingling with the melancholic symphony of the rain pounding on the cobblestones. "You don't belong here," said a voice, sharp as a knife, but she found no source in the shadows crawling around her. Alice paused, her gaze sweeping over the glistening street redolent with the scent of wet asphalt and ambition. Hers was a story of overlooked resilience, a quiet force unnoticed by the thrumming pulse of city life. Once a cherished daughter of a modest family, she now wore her fragility like an armor invisible, yet indestructible. A month had passed since her descent into this urban labyrinth, driven by a search for answers that slipped through her fingers like sand. Zdarova's glittering surface concealed a network of hidden truths, where whispers were traded like currency. Her father's abrupt disappearance demanded questions the city was reluctant to answer. Her existence had dwindled to anonymity, just another shadow in the labyrinth, as the city's privileged and powerful thrived under its neon cloak. Even her nights had become transient whispers of rest, invaded by dreams as ephemeral as smoke. "Alice," she whispered to herself, a chant, a name, an anchor. But crisis was a faithful companion in Zadarova. The night loomed heavy with the weight of another confrontation, yet she was unprepared for the subtle, poignant blow freezing her in place. An ebony car cruised silently to her side, interrupting the lull of the rain. Its presence commanded attention, the very emblem of power with its sleek design and ambiguous promise. Only few knew where it traveled, and fewer dared to question its journey, for it was whispered to belong to the enigmatic Hadrian Volkov. Alice felt the eyes of the city on her, as if the very bricks of the alleyway pressed closer, observing. She stood unyielding in her soaked clothes, a fragile figure with steel behind her eyes. The window rolled down to reveal a man who seemed chiseled from the same darkness as the night itself. His presence was commanding, eyes sharp as obsidian, reflecting both curiosity and indifference. Behind him, the interior of the car was shrouded in shadows, yet one could catch a distant gleam of polished leather and sophistication. "You're a long way from home," he remarked, his voice smooth and cold like rainwater, seeping into cracks. Alice's resolve crystallized. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she replied, her voice unwavering. The man offered no hint of amusement, only a nod of approval, like a judge granting a formidable adversary a moment of recognition. Their eyes locked, an unspoken understanding that the night could forge alliances as easily as it could extinguish hope. Alice's hand brushed against her pendant, a small token of serenity from her father, igniting her courage. Hadrian, it turned out, was as much a mystery as a city. The obstacles before her loomed like insurmountable mountains, yet Alice felt his regard linger, an assessment wrapped in the promise of something ineffable. Another night, another battle, she navigated the beguiling bridges of Zadarova, evading undercurrents that threatened to pull her down, while whispers of her resolve echoed in the corridors of power cloaked in velvet and blood. She realized that Zadarova thrived on the secrets hidden beneath its glimmering exterior. Each challenge she faced seemed designed to dissolve her resolve, but she knew their deceit left them unanswered, and instead reached for the quiet strength born from grief. Her father's words echoed in memory, a reminder: the city's heart beats like a hard, unyielding drum, but beneath its tempo lies the song of the lost. She understood now, a truth she grappled with amidst the gathering storm. She needed allies, fleeting and tenuous as they may be. And perhaps, just perhaps, the dark-eyed stranger with his cryptic promises was such an ally. With dusk turning to dawn, she allowed herself a brief moment of respite under the shelter of an abandoned archway, only to be startled by the rustle of fabric against the cool wind. A shadow detached itself from the cobbled street, a sleek figure watching her with inscrutable intent. It was the faint glint of a ring, catching the fledgling rays of morning light, a silent message of an unspoken invitation. "You followed me," Alice said, her voice barely more than a breath. The stranger remained silent, a spectral presence declaring a vow unsaid, yet understood. For in Zadorova, words were but half-truths and shadows whispered oaths undying. Her heart rose at the brink of hope, a dangerous and intoxicating thought. And then, with a dissonant command that reverberated through the half-light, "Get in the car." The sound of the engine thrummed with an intensity that reverberated through Alice's bones. The car was more than a vehicle. It was a creature of its own, ferrying uncertainties cloaked in opulence. Her hands, pale and trembling, traced the smooth texture of the leather seat as she settled inside. The scent of power and promise enveloped her. What kind of maze had she stepped into, and who truly controlled its walls? Hadrian Volkov sat beside her, a darkly mesmerizing presence, with an aura that was both alluring and foreboding. He remained silent, the cabin filled with the soft hum of the engine and the rain's rhythmic patter against the sleek body of the car. "Where are you taking me?" she ventured, her voice barely cutting through the tension-spun air. He turned, his eyes meeting hers, driven by an unfathomable purpose. Somewhere safe for now. Alice leaned back, cautiously observing him from the corner of her eye. The journey through Zadorova's winding streets stretched out in a languid blur, their path lit only by the sporadic flares of neon signs reflecting off the rain-drenched avenues. She thought of her father, his memories splicing through her mind like fragments of opaque glass, broken, yet holding their own fragile beauty. Had he ever known the depths of the world she navigated now? Or had his own descent into Zadorova's shadows echoed just as hers did? The car mirrored a phantom gliding through the city's metallic veins, bringing them before an imposing mansion, its sprawl hidden behind a dense barrier of monochrome birch trees. A fortress, a playground, a battleground, its facade cryptically whispered each potential truth. "Welcome to Volkov Manor," Hadrian remarked, edging a layer of softness onto his otherwise granite voice. The heavy iron gates swung open, a tangible sigh of machinery and old ambition, allowing them entry. Alice sensed the ghost prowling these grounds, holding tales of triumph and treachery alike. Inside, the mansion was a vision carved out of foreboding elegance, each room a story of grandeur tethered precariously to the darker, unspoken tales. Velvet drapes hung like sentinels, their folds keeping secrets pressed close. "Why me?" Alice asked abruptly, walking beside Hadrian through corridors that seemed alive, seemingly growing shadow and length around them. "You choose your battles wisely, Alice," he said, his pace unhurried but resolute. "And Zadorova respects those who can hold their own against its tide." Yet, even within this monument of safety, the cavity of uncertainty gnawed at her peace. The mansion's wide halls offered visions of splendor, but clearer still was the reminder of her father. The void he'd left felt vast. She paused before a tall window, the view offering a glimpse of the manicured lawns stretching into the horizon, bordered by the wild forest edge. It was a landscape poised between control and chaos. In the reflection upon the glass, she saw Hadrian standing behind Hera's shadow of both protection and enigma. "You miss him," he stated simply, as if reading the grief etched into her silhouette. She nodded, her fingers grazing the glass. "In a way, his absence is the only presence I know. Family." The word resonated around them like an incantation. The weight of it tied them to their foundations, whether they chose to acknowledge it or not. However, Sanctuary bore its own burdens. Word had fled about her presence and whispered through the wind like a rippling threat at dawn. Allies and adversaries, as indistinguishable as ivory and bone, prowled these halls. The crisis arrived as swiftly as a bullet slicing through the twilight. Alarms rang out, a shrill cry intruding upon their controlled silence, uprooting calm with calculated malice. A warning. Hadrian's expression darkened, the stern lines of his face revealing only the faintest hint of irritation. "Our time is fractured. We must move swiftly." The house that promised safety now mirrored the city itself, a labyrinth, with corridors shifting around them, challenging their every decision. "Trust in your instincts, Alice," Hadrian advised, his tone both command and comfort. "They've brought you this far." As the mansion descended into a chaos of footfalls and fragmented orders, Alice realized something that illuminated her path. The worn pendant at her neck, its jewel once unnoticed, now caught the moonlight, a rare gemstone her father had gifted, glimmering with a story untold. And then she understood. The pendant was both key and map. Her father's parting gift was a legacy she'd underestimated, but now saw as a beacon. It might guide her through the storm looming before them. The grounds outside rustled with motion beneath shadowy limbs. She heard whispers growing louder, wrapping her tension within an embrace she knew she must break free of. Alice turned back to Hadrian, the question of trust still bound tight to her thoughts. What now? A calculating pause then. We uncover the hunter among us before they reach their prize. Their eyes locked, an unspoken pact forming between survivor and sentinel. And then the night held a beat of hesitation, a pause pregnant with potential. From the grounds below, an unsettling noise split the air, a crash, menacing, heavy. The gate won't hold them forever, Hadrian murmured, his voice as cold and precise as a blade poised to strike. The silhouette of the intruders melted into darkness, and Alice's heart echoed a truth buried within the night. Allies can come from the most unexpected shadows. But in the heart of the storm, stillness reigned, if only for a fraction of a heartbeat. And then, unexpectedly, from the shadows cast by the mansion's high facade, emerged a startling line, uttered not aloud but felt profoundly. It's not your move to make. The words settled like mist, unreadable, lingering a promise of intrigue to come. The storm crashed down, a celestial theater as thunder roared with visceral fury, rattling the old glass of Volkov Manor. Inside, chaos resonated through the hallowed halls, a muffled shout shaking the air like the tolling of a death knell. Betrayal is close, came Hadrian's voice, cold as the marble underfoot, yet electric with urgency. Alice's head jerked up, snapping away from her turmoil. Betrayal was a word that tasted bitter but intoxicating, hinting at truths veiled in darkness. As her pulse quickened, the fragmented pieces of her life began to fit a puzzle, long abandoned, now calling her towards its secrets. The sensation of scrutiny had woven itself into the fabric of her existence since her first night in Zadarova. The city's familiar indifference now felt menacing. Every glance thrown her way was sharp as the stiletto heels clicking on the stone floors around her. You're a ghost in a land claiming no souls, Hadrian had once said, his own specter of a smile ghosting upon his lips. Zadarova, with its tempestuous spirit, had a way of asserting its dominance, its underbelly, a warren of intrigue and deceit. Alice had always been underestimated, a faint silhouette against the city's decadent backdrop. Her delicate appearance belied the tenacity Orwellian in depth I shall endure. The mansion's upper halls were bathed in flickering shadows cast by candles, dancing defiantly against the night's encroaching midnight beyond opulent windows. Alice had followed Hadrian up the grand staircase, her feet sinking into the intricate patterns of an antique obosum carpet that whispered faded opulence and era-long secrets. With her pendant clutched closely a talisman that glowed with promises unkept, Alice pressed beyond the ornate frames depicting Volkov's past, resolute in her quest for answers. The crisis erupted with a ferocity that defied comprehension. Downstairs, the mansion swelled with voices unearthed, barked orders and bitter accusations staining the air. The atmosphere simmered with an unspoken fear as Hadrian led her down meandering passages towards his study. There are those who profit from chaos, he explained, the flint of his voice sparking as their path twisted past set pieces of a once lavish banquet hall. Thick mahogany doors swung back under Hadrian's grip, revealing a sanctuary pulsating with knowledge. Shelves stretched upwards, teeming with arcane tomes and forbidden documents, their spines crested with golden foil. Alice inhaled the gunmetal scent of Hadrian's cologne, mingling with the dust of ancient volumes. It was a promise mingled with threat, a tenuous balance held only by Volkov's calculated gaze. Scrutiny intensified, awash in the gentle play of moonlight filtering in through leaded glass. Hadrian escorted her to the room's centerpiece, a luxurious desk bedecked with an ivory-inlaid globe, its contents painted with placeholders of past empires. Here, decisively at the epicenter of power, her uncertainty magnified. Alice felt like an intruder in her own odyssey, until her gaze landed upon a slender object lying dormant in the gleam of an alabaster lamp, an ink-black revolver riddled with an aura of unyielding significance. "What we fear to do is often what we must do," Hadrian intoned cryptically, something tinged with regret shadowing his features. Before she could inquire further, a crash resonated anew, magnified as shards of stained glass rained down along their shared sanctum. Alice spun on her heel, the vibrations of threat singing in her blood. "Now, Alice," Hadrian prompted, urgency threading between them, "this is where you find your place in the story." Adrenaline fueled her, burning away hesitation as Alice reached toward the cabinet where the revolver lay cradled among dossiers marked with her father's name. A symbol of unexpected prowess surged through her chest, a daughter's right, a hunter's instinct born anew. The gravity of her father's past choices shimmered behind every enemy's lined gaze, now bearing down upon them from the perimeter of safety she thought these walls promised. "They are here for you, just as much as they are for me," she realized, the ringing epiphany clutching her as Hadrian allowed rare candor to cross his features. With each challenge, Alice's strength emerged from quiet defiance, the echoes of her father's voice urging her onward, woven into the fabric of this storm-tossed haven. Crescendoing footsteps rattled the corridor outside. All at once, Hadrian's plan crystallized a final gambit infused with his relentless obstinacy. He moved like an elegant animal amid the proximity of danger, while Alice tightened her grip around the revolver's cool metal. It was her heart giving the command as she leveled her weapon, unleashed among the folds of night as antagonists breached the alabaster-lit threshold. Windows shattered, bodies jostled under flaring gunfire, the heat of carved stakes accelerating beyond controlled violence. A rapid bark of knees against polished oak punctuated the air, while Alice relished the autonomy wrested from the jaws of her own mutinous fear. Her mind was a film of grayscale memory trailing her path to this precipice. "They think strength is brute force," Hadrian murmured, as he too wielded his strength in jest among straining shadows flickering from every angle. Victory seized both air and expectation, loosening within Alice a thread of humility she held brightened against her father's legacy. Amid the final crescendo of dissonance, set against the peaceful whimpering of snow that stilled beyond the fractured, hollow voice streamed through the case, adorned in riddles bespoken, "The jewel was never yours to claim." And in the vaulting tension, thickened as Alice plunged toward a recalibrated truth, the night gambled a breath on coherence. Above the din, a single calamitous clang echoed down, the crashing of an invisible mantle, or fragile dreams breaking. The evening wore its prismatic betrayal. And as Alice stood fortified amidst unraveling shrouds, a singular, haunting observation cleared the air. "Her move, it seems, has begun," a conspiratorial celebrated, casting anew their shadowed fates against the dying outcry of furious ambition. Then silence trembled. A monolithic enigma unfurled into the heart of night. A clock's ghostly chime concluded, fingers splayed upon implicit promises carried by morning songbirds yet unseen. Volkov Manor now lay quiet, a vigilant outpost amidst shadows lengthening across the dawn. Yet Alice's journey had only begun, and so too had the city begun its uncensored revelation. From some secluded corner of perseverance, another contract whispered shapes, now emerging from beyond cloistered walls. A truth was being born, its edges as uncertain as the abyss Alice chose to sail. Alice's eyes cast firm upon the horizon, daring to await the coming storm, and in the folds of time's serenade, a solitary chord subsisted. "It begins anew," her voice echoed, severed across a city piazza where their lives lay fated, waiting for what came next. Among the shroud, a singular light flared carrying the dawn, commanding her forward. The air was an inch from screaming. Alice, tucked into a viscous silence, felt it keen in her bones. Around Volkov Manor, the emerald-lit windows framed the night in a kaleidoscope of secrecy and tension. All was still, except for one unmistakable sound, a faint scraping, deliberate, as if someone were coaxing open the past with slow precision. Alice's senses flared as she stood amidst the grandeur of what was once Hadrian's unassailed domain, now a realm cloaked in uncertainty. Her eyes traced the contours of the room, each antique holding whispers of history unknown to her, but essential to the city's fate. Hadrian materialized beside her, his pace slow, deliberate, his mien sharpened to an edge only a seasoned player possessed. "Our peace is an illusion, Alice," he observed, voice tempered by an eerie calm. Beneath her trembling hand, the locket pendant pulsed with a warmth not of the world outside, a beacon of inner truth. One point of clarity amidst the haze of conspiracy. Contact with the manor dwindled to antiseptic talk of war. Alice listened, deciphering signals wrapped in deceiving ordinariness. Her arrival had set off a storm not born of the city, one whose eye landed eerily on her wayward journey. And then an occurrence deserving of Legenda Dog's bark sliced through the pretense, raw and unexpected. Volkov Manor's tactical heart quaked as the mythic menace, the prelude of a more profound intrusion, filtered through its corridors. Alice froze, sensing the tide shift, the way it always did in her dreams, just when certainty seems an inch away. Yet the city's tension, inflamed with the weft of Hadrian's mastery, felt different now. In this suspended clarity, something primal howled within her, demanding she act. She turned to him, a question poised on her lips. "They approach from within," Hadrian announced softly, his declaration laden with layers. He vanished into the fabric of the house, the decision implicit in his absence. Alice followed, her mind carving a path through the veiled hostility. Their journey brought them to the conservatory, a glass house where the night pressed in eagerly, humming with the murmured promise of revelation. Hadrian drew her attention to an unassuming plant, buried among the exotic hybrids. The small sword haphazardly strapped, within remarkable natural beauty, a reminder of the paradox of strength. "To win this city's games," he murmured, "strength must wear the guise of humility." But another presence loomed, a silhouette wild and defiant, leashed by neither morality nor time. The commotion outside swelled on the precipice of indiscriminate havoc, the storm pursued through old-world echoes rendered jagged by the forecast of betrayal. "They don't need the staircase if they can leap," Alice remarked, irony chasing the undercurrents of their peril reality. Hadrian rewarded her comment with a taut nod, something akin to resigned amusement, brushing the periphery of his countenance, redefined by clarity. From beneath the estate, the mansion's hidden heart revealed through the frailty of its forgotten Solera network unfolded. Veins of lost and gained advantage, both. Guided by Hadrian's past configurations of assurance and resource, Alice took anchorage on her purpose. The realization stemming from the city's strong appetite for reinvention, a task bearing both punishment and promise. Alice steeled herself, climbing into the storm's voracious fury. A calm certainty accompanied her, recognizing Hadrian's footprint, the symbols of power exchanged in darkened briefings. Yet here in the luminous domain, knitted of others' ambitions, something shifted, a clarity of Alice's past converging with a ghost's touch. Overshadowed deeds told of her father's strange alliances. Within that moment, a familiar bark trickled through the Dina Guardian perhaps, or a messenger. "Sergei," Hadrian coaxed with quiet authority, his presence recast by the pending revelation. Built among the ruins of illumination left from those who too long played beneath the heavens, destiny was nothing more than a dog's vigilance, testing Alice in a turbulent embrace of fated chance. A breath shared as silence hardened around them, pregnantly acknowledging malevolence beyond the ever-present silhouette of gleaming paws. And yet within the shivered remains of Zadorova, under the bond and bones of conspiracies reshaped, giggled whispers of the dog heard. One anticipated madness, a flourish of wild progress, marking reliance and potential threat, detained by the gentle hand of compassion's revolution. Alice's odyssey fell unembellished as dwindling storms played among the spirited drums of her heart, contemplating what veracity might glean in precipice's command. She poised herself, one hand fixed upon the quivering jewel at her neck, comfortable forte illuminated by chance's enduring hymn. With a single quiet breath, she acknowledged it. "I call on you, Allie, may you show the truth." Like so many forgotten cycles before, the measure of trust entrusted its weight upon her, unfurling destiny crafted by moonlit endeavors, threatening to morph into morning certainty. In the defiant chuckle of ionized life, a bark-built cessation shadow-etched to Volkov's beckoning tempo, the insinuated creeper sharing the coming of light. Pressing toes on the edge of fate, Alice stood prepared, welcoming her role, her irrevocable flower to the dawn's zenith. And finally, from Shadow's corner, a detail eschewed beyond reason extended like an artifact in diligent reflection. "Shh," whispered the night, nurturing its potential before the storm. A deep and unnerving heartbeat echoed through the manor, shaking off the night's residue from the city's watchful eye pulse that throbbed with urgency and mystery. Alice inhaled deeply as she stood on the threshold of Volkov Manor, a beacon unfurling within the secrecy that marked its every shadow. She was a ghost who had been summoned by the tangible whispers of windswept tales, now faced with unmasking a storm laden with opportunity for rebirth or ruin. "It starts with a whisper," Hadrian's voice murmured from behind, a shadow extending into her space. His presence a unique symphony of commanding silence. His words made Alice straighten, a challenge freshly in tundrizing. As her gaze swept through the copper glow that bathed the entrance, a soft chill enveloped her. The manor felt like an extension of Zadarova itself, both sanctuary and snare. The night was a mosaic beyond her sight, citizens of its darkness flitting on the periphery. Alice's pulse danced a steady rhythm, magic in each thrum, despite the weight of uncertainty. Her fingers grazed the pendant at her collar, a lifeline forged from yesteryear's hopes and truths left unspoken. Alice had been dismissed by society, more shadow than substance. Yet in the eyes of Hadrian, she was a thread of resolve holding firm against Zadarova's gale. "I'll hold the line," she had promised herself, in a voice marked by quiet determination, her presence a melody underlined by defiance. Then chaos charged sudden into her path, slicing through the still night. Guttural warnings shattered the quiet. "They're coming!" an anonymous voice barked, slicing through the potential of tranquility. Inside, the mansion quaked with the footsteps of hidden truths coming to light, each twist and turn of fate magnifying against the splendor that lined the walls. Alice stood firm, weathering the rush of emotions as adversaries pressed closer. Her poignant memories echoed through the walls, the past and the present entwined in a fleeting embrace. Onward the clash grew, formidable and raw. The mansion seemed to swell with the ferocity of a storm, its corridors alive with spectral echoes. In the ballroom, muted candlelight bathed the expanse. The strains of an old piano chord seemed to linger in the air, held captive by eternal night. A decisive move took shape within the tension. Hadrian emerged from the dim twilight, a stark look of resolve etched across his features. Alice hesitated only a moment before joining him, shadows flying back among the curtain's folds as they slid through magnified silence. "Trust is the knife's edge," his voice cut, carving an intricate line between conviction and vulnerability. Beyond them, monochrome specters moved, figures etched against the darkness. Their intentions carried on the breeze, intriguing and malefic. Unexpected alliances seemed woven into the tapestry of the night-old rivals, united by the fear of unalterable outcomes. The pressure splintered pathways into countless pieces, her resolve growing fervently with each unfolding test. Alice, her senses heightened, moved with elegance untarnished by fear yet. A hidden truth charged through Alice's consciousness, a revelation amidst her own story's rebirth. Here, amid the brilliance of tension, the echoes of her father's voice crystallized. A map embedded in memory illuminated clarity, a pathway entwined with the city's evolving narrative. Alice's touch upon the necklace shimmered with newfound resolve, her steps gaining purpose as the puzzle unraveled. Together with Hadrian, she slipped into the grand study, a vessel filled with human experience and the weight of untold tales. The pressure mounted minute by minute, the stakes twisted higher. The tapestry of night's camaraderie threaded through obstacles veined with secrets. Hadrian's gaze revealed an unsaid pledge as he stepped forward, a flicker of approval her words had unraveled. Together, he stated, affirmation riding the air. Strains of suspense fled through the crack, the night itself expanding between stars as if to witness the unfolding fate. A swift transformation surged, a rare gift long ripe in the pendulum of Alice's life, as grasped truth wrapped her in its trembling embrace. The climax fractured the air, a syncopated list crescendoed before Hera. Dance of subterfuge where every whisper traced the city's breath. Alice's hand upon the revolver promised resolution. Crime beard too deeply, its legend forever whispered amid the gardens of resolve, hidden within her father's legacy. A moment's pause, tense and beautiful, marred by realization before the shadows ringing their closure among fate's blooms. A lapse of illusions presented its lesson, an indelible print of wisdom guided by moonlight's honesty. And then, as dawn rays kissed the curtains with tender hues, anticipation tapered the whispers. The mirror of destiny held steady, reflecting unearthed hopes and mourned dreams, sacrosanct across the threshold of identity. Echoes melded within Alice's resolve. Expansion arced upon the horizon's radiance, a spirit bound into the night's transforming edge. And as a pearl of potential spread across time's mirrored surface, amidst Heldrian's silent presence, a decisive tableau unfolded. Your choice, Alice, the city's in your palms. Reality bridged into imagination's embrace, the moment writ across fateful pages entwined with presence and choice. In the tender dawn, a ghosting chord arose, a promise sealed against day's enfolded awakening. A shadow loomed over the city as the screech of tires echoed through the narrow alleyways, fear seeping into the veins of the night itself. Dim streetlights shimmered through fogged windows, casting skeletal figures across rain-splattered windshields. It was in one such isolated corner of Zadarova, where the underworld's pulse thrummed incessantly, that Alice found herself entrenched in the heart of her father's unsolved mystery. Within the confines of the damp and dimly lit room, Alice stood, her eyes tracing the faded wallpaper, once crimson, now a dull aubergine, all while the air tasted of betrayal and desperation. Her breath hung suspended, visible in the frosty room, a constant reminder of the life she desperately held on to. "You're going to try and take what isn't yours," came a voice snapping like a broken string, as a man stepped from the shadows. His presence a jarring cigarette burn in the fabric of her dilemma. An unsmiling figure with eyes that held a measure of feral intelligence, Mikhail Volkov, known enforcer for the family and self-proclaimed guardian of its secrets, leaned against the doorway. His gaze was heavy, calculating as if stripping her bare with a practiced ease. Alice had long discarded the fragile naivety of the world she once knew, drawn into a vortex where illusion was reality's harshest edge. She had not prepared for another Volkov, yet her resolve wavered only slightly as she straightened, displaying the same stoical grace that had become her armor. "My father's past is intricately woven with yours, Mikhail. I have a right to know the truth," she replied, her voice a quiet thunder that belied the tempest within. Mikhail moved closer, the rancid stench of old cigars and bourbon souring the air between them. The tension was visceral, painting the room with shadows dancing under the flickering lamp. "Do you think the truth will set you free, Alice?" he sneered, the cynicism in his voice cutting through the thin veneer of politeness. "It's not about freedom," she said, clutching the pendant that lay against her chest like a lifeline, reaffirming the creed she'd silently vowed to fulfill. "It's about understanding." Mikhail's sardonic smile was brief, a shadow flecked with disdain. Yet within his steel armor, Alice sensed an unexpected fracture, a past not quite buried, maybe even shared. "Walk with me." His command was soft, elusive as fog, as he gestured towards the adjacent corridor where moonlight caught fleeting reflections off the polished marble floors, guiding them like silent sentinels. The walls seemed to whisper tales of glory and greed as they entered a grand ballroom, its opulence stark against the ruinous secrets it harbored. Every creak of the polished boards only sang history's unfortunate chorus. "Risk breeds resilience here," Mikhail muttered, almost to himself, footsteps echoing beside specters of the past. "But it also demands a reckoning." Alice paused at his side, their reflection in the large mirrored panel appeared otherworldly under the subdued light, as if revealing a tableau unforeseen, one where past and present converged. A feeling surged within her, something akin to compassion, a connection with a man bound by obligation, yet seemingly haunted by choices not his own. In a world rife with shadows, Alice's belief re-solidified. Trust, tentative as a whisper, had to be earned, not given. "Your family doesn't just hold secrets, Mikhail," she said softly, her eyes meeting his in the mirrored surface. "It holds the power of life and destruction." There was a brief, contemplative silence before Mikhail nodded, a silent acquiescence as they continued. revealing a side of him that perhaps even he hadn't confronted with full clarity. In the depths of the mansion's living heart, Alice found herself once more following the manuscript of destiny that stared at every face it shifted past a dance, choreographed by forces beyond her understanding, yet pounded from within. The moon was high, casting a cold luminescence over their path as they navigated through the decrepit maze, each corridor more intimidating than the last, infused with history's unyielding grip. It was here, under the weight of collective memory, that Alice unearthed one of her buried truths, a strength cultivated, not found. Her father had always taught her to listen to the city's rhythm, its narrative spun only for those who dared to lean in. She felt it anew, a hunter's instinct awakening within a melody that unfolded ever so subtly as they neared the scarlet drapery, concealing ancient cabinets steeped in forbidden lore. Her revelation was crystalline, bone-deep understanding of her place in this estranged world. The city upheld secrets jealously guarded. To speak them was treacherous but necessary for absolution. "Here," Mikhail finally said, as a hidden panel slid open with a grate, revealing a hidden chamber, and within it, a safe exuding a nigh-tangible aura of foreboding promise. Alice gazed at the vault, an emblem of her father's untold tale, its older Thansin design captivating her as if steeped in whispers long passed under. She knew the irony. It wasn't just the city that swallowed its own. Sometimes it was one's family. "We call this the Room of Resolution," Mikhail admitted, their voices weaving over the stillness as Alice faced the historical ledger within. Enough power here could end feuds or reignite them for generations. Alice nodded, understanding the weight of this revelation. Her father's secret had been his gamble too. Her hand slipped into her pocket, retrieving the key that her father had left, a tangible link across time. "This is more than a room of secrets. It is our chance at amnesty," Alice whispered, realizing the potential for reconciliation, an opportunity long evaded now rippling in potential resolution. Mikhail adjusted his stance, the echo of a weary warrior hardened by countless battlegrounds. This humble chamber bore witness not only to conflict, but to hope nestling precariously on its brink. It was time. A gentle push revealed the contents stowed beyond ephemeral barriers, a collection held sacred by time and treachery, the impact profound as a blossom amid a winter's embrace. But out of nothingness, without so much as a forewarning, the haunting tenor of gunfire erupted from the wood-paneled walls, a symphony of impending disaster poised to consume all. And just as the silence was shattered irreparably, a shadow flitted past the periphery, daring them to pursue. "We need to move now," Alice said sharply, sensing the sound's origin drawing nearer their clandestine haven. Her determination clutched her spirit, unsheathing clarity only battle could birth. Their only recourse lay beyond, within a labyrinth hidden beneath the gaudy veneer, pulsing with expectancy, where danger flashed its familiar, sinister grin. Mikhail's following gaze sealed their resolve, a pact forged in necessity and shrouded by the promise of change. As the chamber door eased shut behind them, anticipation sang, apropos of what the city's starlit roof concealed. Together they braved paths untold. Untold, Alice's newfound strength emerging vibrant under trial. "Remember," Mikhail murmured, a ghost of a grin painting his sharp features. "History is a cycle. We forge what it may become." Leaving behind the room of judgmental testimony, Alice felt both weight and liberation, fate seasonal in its capricious winds in newfound endeavors. But just as they landed in the vestibule of escapee, a tangled weave of shattered alliances and cruel starlight, made whole a twist of fate, revealed itself. Upon leaving, Alice spied it, a symbol flashing amongst a brazen ornate ring with a gleam as cold and calculated as the intentions that bore it. And there it beckoned deception's hungry gaze, calling out like a siren song among the chaos of their hurried exodus. The crackling sound of electricity pierced the silent night, eerily resonating through the abandoned citadel of Volkov Manor. Shadows flickered, racing along the walls as Alice stood frozen at the edge of an unfolding nightmare. In that fissure between safety and chaos, she had not anticipated the betrayal lurking so perilously close to Sanctuary's threshold. Her heart ached, a staccato rhythm, filling the air with a tension so thick it could have been cut with a blade. The corridors, lined with portraits of stern ancestors casting disapproving shadows, seemed to whisper secrets among themselves. Alice felt them, their ghostly gazes boring into her back, as she stood amidst the relics of an empire built on both honor and blood. "I never wanted this to be resolved with violence," Alice almost whispered to herself, recalling the promise she'd made when embarking on this journey. Every echo in the empty hall seemed to mock her resolve, reminding her of the volatile dance she had entered into with fate itself. Hadrian's figure, forming from the darker corners of the hall, brought with it a sense of grim protection. His appearance was like living brushstrokes across a dark canvas, his eyes flinty as they sought hers. "They knew we would be here," he stated, his voice smooth yet edged with disbelief. She turned to face him fully, unyielding. "My father played a deeper game than even I knew." They both understood the implication that those trusted with family secrets could just as easily twist them into barbed traps. Outside, the ceiling thundered anxiously, rain pelting the windows and distorting the landscape into fragments. Nature conspired with volatility, as if the very world beyond the glass longed to cleanse the taint of betrayal. Inside, preparations were made with furious energy, testament to the beseeching chaos threatening to break loose. Every footfall in Volkov Manor reverberated with urgency. Alice felt the weight of her pendant, more an anchor now than a talisman. Her father's secret, forged in metal and promise, was her silent companion in this Byzantine labyrinth of betrayals. Hadrian's skepticism softened, a rare vulnerability emerging in the creases around his eyes as he turned to Alice. "Can you trust yourself to move through this?" Her reply was steadfast. "I must, or lose what we've gained." Crisis burgeoned in the arrival of Hadrian's associate Vera, an enigmatic shadow draped in a rain-soaked cloak, eyes as sharp as steel and twice as focused. Her presence was a stark reminder of alliances that existed on a razor's edge. "We have visitors," Vera announced briskly, her voice cutting through the moment like scissors through thread. "Not the kind we invited." Her matter-of-fact tone belied the gravity, the malaise deepening as heavier truths emerged within those walls. The alliance formed between Hadrian and Alice had not gone unnoticed. Vigilance was paramount. Within her solace, Alice understood their danger most acutely. The weight of decision was immense, a crucible of the very fear and strength that defined their fates. The adversaries were closing in, palpable beneath the surface of each conversation straying towards intimidation. Every echo of laughter at the edges of the room was laced with menace, a symphony awaiting a soloist to begin the prelude into chaos. Alice clutched at the pendant, drawing calm from the physical solidity of it, the only connection she had with the father whose legacy she was desperate to redeem. The shadows of their predicament stretched, always darker, always deeper than the apparent threats. Frenzy, fear, faith, they all woven into the fabric of tonight's suffocating tapestry. Amidst these whispers, something inside her shifted. A realization pierced through her fear, a new legacy waiting to be written. Hadrian pointed towards the study, the once untamed setting of their initial plans now a ground for decisive action. "Vera can lead our alternate path. Draw attention to the north wing, where the passage is narrow," Hadrian suggested, each word sketched onto their tenuous blueprint. Alice nodded, eyes skimming the expanse of her palm, against which she determinedly held the night's uncertainties. A moment of raw honesty unfurled between them, the understanding of guardianship over promises long deferred. In a universe thick with emotional terrain, Alice was bathing in its rewarding waters, drenched in loyalty and fortitude. Somewhere outside, fireworks of dissonance broke the ethereal symmetry. With no hesitation, Hadrian forged the path, a flurry of cape and certainty guiding Alice onwards. Emotion sat heavy in the journey. Using only the illumination of what history echoed, Alice navigated through the mansion's depths with the cool assurance of someone renewed in the grip of adversity's pearl. The climax came softly, a revelation gleamed with quiet fire. No epiphany overt or gaudy, but a confluence of tenderness and strength. An awakening in a chasm where loss met purpose and bloomed. Within her soul flickered portraits of the moments brought together by pain, but bonded anew by hope, a whisper against the coming storm. Alice took a deep breath, the fabric of her determination as strong as the rain attacking the windows, with a war cry anticipating dawn. As they swept into the heart of truthfulness, the knowledge bound her to an existential heart Volkov's destiny and hers tethered in an embrace only family tied. A cliffhanger waited with bated breath. In the ballroom's dark expanse, a single detail caught the fading light, a glimmer no larger than a man's fist, but as breathtaking as the promise of coming salvation. "Did you ever know the meaning?" Hadrian quieted. There, under the dying embers of emergency intrigue, lay a tantalizing hint-to-ripped page from her father's journal, clutched by the gust of wind sweeping the storm's entry into fragility's chamber. Rain slashed across the city's skyline, as if the heavens mourned, the steering wheel beneath Alice's hands like an anchor mooring her to the uncertain reality ahead. Zadarova's streets blurred past her peripheral vision, painted in shades of red and blue, where police lights sketched fleeting glimpses of authority slipping into chaos. The night was ablaze with tension and hidden undercurrents, a paradox of sound and silence that swallowed everything in its path. She was driving faster than she'd ever dared, leaving the shattered glass of the ballroom behind, where moments ago gunfire had erupted like an unscripted storm. Within the gated confines of Volkov Manor, echoing boots had trampled over the tentative peace she and Hadrian had labored to forge. As the car tore through the rain-soaked streets, streaks of water kissed the hood, singing wet melodies against the metallic armor of her borrowed vehicle from the manor. The pendant at her throat flickered with a life of its own, as if urging her onward, a beacon amidst the frantic cadence of her breath. Alice was acutely aware of the eyes that had watched her leave, Vera's most prominently, shadowed in concern, and a silent oath of loyalty. Somewhere in the recesses of her mind, Hadrian's parting words lingered, laced with both trust and a heavy foretelling. "Beware the shadows," he'd said, a hint of sadness in his voice. She clenched her jaw, eyes sharp as the night laid out its wicked traps ahead. In this cat-and-mouse game, Zadarova was both opponent and reluctant ally, its maze-like streets wielding secrets like cards waiting to be dealt. Within her bones, a familiar mantra took hold: "The city breathes with you." It had been her father's saying, his way of acknowledging Zadarova's sentience and its role in shaping destinies, for better or worse. Her departure from Volkov Manor was neither hasty nor unplanned. Each movement married purpose to instinct, as if retracing steps outlined by forebears who'd navigated these perilous paths before her. The objective was clear: reach the safe house in the old market district, one of the few remaining bastions tethered to her father's past endeavors, and now to her unraveling journey. The rain intensified, drumming insistently on the windshield, as if seeking entry to her thoughts. Isolation wove a film of introspection over her drive, each street lamp a brief illumination of the world she'd chosen. Suddenly the radio crackled to life, static erupting in bursts of incoherent noise. A low voice cut through with clarity that sent shivers racing down her spine. "Does the dove fly with the falcon, or does it fall into the storm?" There was no answer to the riddle, only the haphazard rhythm of her pulse lodging in her throat. The city spoke through its emissaries, and those allies or adversaries who knew more than she did about the dangers, about escape routes, about choices between staying hidden or coming into the light. Alice's grip on the wheel grew determined, countering the uncertainty shadowing her every action. She imagined her fingers as vines rooting her to destiny, a reminder that somewhere beyond this moment lurked the completion of a journey taken from girlhood through to the heart of the city's clandestine underworld. Then, as she turned a corner past the forgotten husk of an old cathedral, a shadow shifted in the passenger seat beside her, unbidden and unannounced. Her breath caught, body coiled tight with the shock of all she had not foreseen, the unwelcome visitation that carried its own agenda. Too far down the rabbit hole to turn back now came a voice she hadn't expected. Hadrian's composed presence materialized in a reflection of his own authority. Night folded around them, a hushed witness to the conversation that resisted labeling. Her pulse quickened. "How did you details for another time?" he interrupted, his assured demeanor masking any hint of vulnerability. Together they navigated through the city's arteries, his presence solidifying her resolve as tension assembled at the borders of each potential choice. Despite the fractures of despair, the alliance they shared fortified the air between them. Zadorova thrived on the whims of power, deceit layered beneath every surface. Alice considered her father then, his lessons and his failings, cherished moments folded into the edges of her mindful determination. Turning onto a narrow road engulfed by warehouses in various stages of decay, the glistening wet pavement served as testament to the city's embrace, unyielding yet reluctantly guiding. A flicker of hope adopted familiar faces among strangers. She whispered a swift, silent prayer, a relic from her mother's gentle wisdom, now brushing like moth wings against the chaos. As they neared the heart of the market district, a figure stood under a flickering street lamp, rain tracing the lines of a face both strangely familiar and decidedly out of place. It was Mikhail, his coat spattered with rain, his silhouette framed against the pulse of the night. Alice's mind spun with the implications and the latent threats posed by his presence alone. The engine purred as they pulled to a stop, the world suddenly too quiet, the city watchful as a hunting leopard ready to pounce. Resigned to the leap, she exited the vehicle, each step deliberate, rain misting her senses with a cold embrace. Mikhail's gaze was inscrutable, neither welcome nor harboring overt hostility, a perplexing neutrality that wrapped secrecy deeply. Hadrian, Mikhail nodded in greeting, eyes casting between the two of them, steeped in currents of hidden understanding. Alice clenched her pendant, invoking strength marinated by time and trust. She met Mikhail's eyes with unwavering determination. Head-dressing the rain like a courtier of remnants and stories undone, Hadrian inched forward, a radical truth, or poisoned revelation hanging amidst them all. In that moment, Alice felt the weight of choice suspended as if wrapped in the heartbeat of the rain around her. Was it ally? Was it enemy? Questions wrenching deeper than memory as tensions crawled to their inevitable breaking point. Then Hadrian's voice broke the silence, a single command draped in soft velvet yet lined with stone. Decide where your loyalty lies. The man sitting at the polished wooden desk didn't look up immediately when she entered. The room was tense, filled with the ozone tang of rain that seeped through the half-closed windows, and the air was thick with the subtext of unfinished conversations. Alice stood at the threshold, eyes darting between shadowed corners and the silent reverence of old portraits. You came alone? Mikhail's voice was deep, gravely, as if cooperation had been a well-earned habit between silences. Alice nodded, clenching her fingers around her pendant, a small silver medallion with an intricate engraving that seemed alive in the dim light. The room was a museum of luxurious ruin, every object meant to both entice and intimidate. There was a time she'd have shrunk beneath the weight of such expectation, but no longer. Where does it end? She asked, her words a quiet ripple across the surface of that charged space. Mikhail glanced at her, and for a fraction of a second, his eyes betrayed a flicker of something pity, respect before his stoic facade settled back in place. Perhaps it doesn't. His admission hung heavy, implying layers of history intricate and intertwined as threads of fate. In the silence, the rain began again, softer now, but insistent, its rhythm striking the panes like an unending ovation to the play happening beneath its onlookers. Mikhail stood, every movement deliberate, a bitterness to his smile that suggested old wounds rather than relief. This storm won't end until you make a choice, he offered, each word heavy with consequence. Loyalty is a one-way street, Alice. Choose your path, but remember what lies at the end of each one. She hesitated, the pendulum of rage and retribution swinging within her. Since discovering her father's disappearance, Alice had been tangled in webs she didn't even know existed, driven by a determination so sharp it cut her from within. And yet, here she was, standing at the nexus of every decision, her heart pounding out the balance between dissonant truths and necessary alignments. She wouldn't be here if she wasn't ready, Hadrian interrupted, sauntering from the shadows with a nonchalance that challenged convention. His presence was another storm, one of charisma and quiet menace. Mikhail offered no greeting, only a terse nod that reeked of familiarity sown by shared trials. Alice watched them, realizing they were both avatars of this disjointed tale, figures conjured from half-spoken legends and whispered promises. Hadrian's eyes met hers, intent and patient. "No one can write your story but you, Alice," he said, voice low but shaped by urgency. "My father's legacy," she began, feeling the cool burn of the pendant gleam under her fingers. Mikhail's smirk mimicked forgotten triumphs. "Comes with a price." She let out a slow breath, the weight of expectation now a mantle on her shoulders, woven from years of unspoken vows and choices made under duress. She had always known this moment would shape her. What she hadn't counted on was the depth of its demand. Amid the echo of her decision, a distant sound reverberated, a door creaking open, portending the entrance of new players to this unfolding drama. Shadows inched closer, whispering their presence through the shrouded edges of the room. This new life of entanglements demanded vigilance, an unyielding balance of heart and grit. She could feel it in the air, the shifts like tectonic plates of destiny grinding against each other beneath the surface. Yet in her soul, a decision solidified a ripple in the calm before a nascent storm. Her father's whispered words alighted upon her conscience like a benediction. "The truth lies in the river, not the bank." Alice released the pendant, stepping closer to the darkness that Hadrian embodied as much as he defied. "A pact of shadows, then?" she proposed, her voice holding the weight of acceptance. Hadrian nodded, a rare smile softening the harsh lines of his face. Together he confirmed, resolved in shared purpose. "And what of you, Mikhail?" she questioned, challenging the unpredictable call of his allegiance. Leaning back, he considered his position amidst sundry alignments, his answer a careful blend of simplicity and enigma. "I side with the song that has the truest echo." Her eyes caught the gleam of Mikhail's ring, a simple band, worn dull by time's passage, yet somehow radiantly potent. It twinkled under the dim glow, a symbol as robust and inexorable as the city itself. Alice inclined her head, acknowledging the veracity of the moment shared. This night would not change her, but the choice she wrought within it could unsettle empires. Beyond the compound walls, the rain's melody altered, growing more harmonious, a prelude to the day's new sonata emergent on an electric horizon. In the layered stillness, surrounded by history's presence and the quiet resignation of fresh agreements, Alice felt the beginnings of a fragile peace. It was a peace born not of conclusions, but a vantage, a precipice from which all aspirations could seek their genesis. The lines of alliances had been drawn by candor, incurious of innocence, a foreshadowing steeped in untouched dawns stretched wide across Zadarova's skyline. With a patience sown from storms weathered in tandem, Hadrian and Mikhail flanked her path, uncertain yet accepting of the narrative song, unfolding anew beneath the city's watchful gaze. As they moved toward the looming exit, the dawn broke, a whisper of light breaking against the gilded harp of rain, teasing as the world awaited its inevitable conclusion. "Do you hear it, Alice?" Hadrian mused, voice wrapped in mystique. "The end of the beginning," she acknowledged with a nod, each word resounding through sedimented truths now clear. And there, at the threshold of dawn and promise, an inescapably vivid sight caught her, a solitary feather, black as night, floating down from the eve's shadows, a silent harbinger with tales yet to be told. The man at the helm of leadership peered into the abyss of his own making, contemplating but not flinching, as the flames rose higher with each decision. "It's just the beginning," he mused, watching the illumination paint the walls of their sanctuary with a vivid brightness that was unnervingly beautiful. Alice stood across from him, absorbing the warmth and pulsating energy from the inferno they had orchestrated. She was a tableau of potential unthought. The air tasted metallic, charged with the bittersweet promise of triumph wrapped intimately in peril. Her gaze was unwavering, locked with Hadrian's in a silent accord tethered by sleepless nights and whispered confessions in the shadows of betrayal. Amidst the chaos, an image of her father, his gentle yet unyielding presence, filed in like a healing balm. The air around them thickened with the same rapid tempo electrifying the city. This was everything her father had prepared her for, whispered stories by firesides transformed into reality afresh. "He always believed," she muttered, voice delicate as threads of history. Hadrian's nod was subtle, nothing more than a contraction of his jaw beneath the shadows streaking his face like history's soliloquy. "And so did you." The flames fed on ambition and history alike, But Alice found her place within the madness. Her identity, woven from the remnants of heartbreak and strength, shimmered beneath the mantle she had accepted when stepping into the storm's heart. Allies and former enemies traverse this plain today under truces inked in desperation and foresight, all staring into the spectacle that bore witness to justice reimagined. Mikhail emerged, subtracting shadows as he held the weight of years in solemn understanding. We all live by choices. Some drown in them. His admission was wrapped in layers of latent regret and tentative forgiveness, a path not solely his own, but shared between them. Alice took this acknowledgement, threading it into the tapestry of victory or survival. She was an artist among histories untold and futures yet unpainted, guided by the beacon of strength glittering anew at her heart. The hour was a ghost upon them, time given an eerie extension by the fevered symphony of potential and conquest. Young faces alight with defiance found their immortality threatened, while Alice's core unfurled part defiance, part surrender to destiny. The pressure crescendoed, mirrored in every breath, every pulse, in that chamber where fortunes converged. What happens now? The words fell unadorned from Mikhail, curious yet knowing spoken, like an oracle chiseling prophecy into the wind. Steeling herself, Alice stepped forth, vision of a world imbued with choice rather than dictated by silence. We stride on, she replied simply, footsteps marked with clarity as the path wound beneath their feet. The marketplace huddled against the horizon loomed, a canvas for stories awash with complexity and charm, where the echoes of resistance bled ruby onto tapestry previously monochrome. She sensed approval shared in the shared gaze of Hadrian's eyes, in Mikhail's begrudging esteem. This isn't the ending, Hadrian offered her, the warmth of shared adversity lingering, adding as a whisper to the brisk dawn. Just another beginning, all yours if you choose. Light's first kiss caught fire alongside the flickering notes of harmony, promising eternal tug between dark and enlightenment. The legacy apparent, yet transient in understanding. Amidst embracing vulnerability entwined with resilient dexterity, Alice felt it then a profound birthright, birthing a heroine awakened. The city shall know her name, not as a whisper, but resonating as hymns sung to a steadfast tomorrow. The metaphorical clock began anew, transported aesthetic tempered, scarcely by throats dry with unvoiced longing. And yet, as she stood, poised upon the cusp of either comprehension or obscurity, a single crystal note hung in the air, echoing behind behold the shadow within the light.